Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Gaurav Gupta from Sharda University. Today we are going to talk on module Capacity Planning, Importance and its Measures from paper Operation Management. This chapter helps students to understand ways to measure capacity, reasons for economies and diseconomies of sale, capacity gaps and ways to fill them. Capacity is generally defined as maximum rate of output. Capacity planning is an important and complex decision. It is important because capacity to fulfill increased rate of demand is necessary for a firm to earn profits and to be successful. It is complex because it requires decisions regarding how much capacity to increase, what if demand slow down, then what should be done to excess capacity. When capacity should be increased, etc. For example, a hotel estimating an increased demand in coming tourist season increases its capacity of rooms from 80 to 100. The decision to increase capacity becomes important as building of new rooms and provision of services would incur cost. The manager might be able to earn profits by fulfilling increase in demand, but after tourist season, when demand tapers down, he or she faces with problems of underutilization of increased capacity. Thus, decision to increase capacity becomes a complex decision. For illustration purpose, consider example of a pizza manufacturer. Before installing capacity resources to manufacture certain amount of pizzas, the firm has to consider following aspects. What is the estimated demand of pizzas? As the firm would be providing variety of pizzas, so what would be the estimated demand of each kind of pizza? Are there chances of increase in demand? If it is so, then by how much and by when? Should the firm use resources of one product's capacity resulting in lower production of that product? There are lot of questions related to capacity planning, making it one of the most important decisions for management. For above illustrations, capacity can be defined as amount of resources required to produce and estimate output. If output increases, resources required to produce increased output also increases. But if output decreases, then company's resources should be flexible enough that they can be used for production of other products. It should also be noted that demand is a function of market forces which are not in control of a firm, whereas whether to increase or decrease capacity is a decision made by management by taking into consideration demand. Definition and importance. Capacity is generally defined as maximum rate of output. Capacity planning is an important and complex decision. It is important because capacity to fulfill increased rate of demand is necessary for the firm to earn profits and to be successful. It is complex because it requires decisions regarding how much capacity to increase, what if demand slow down, then what should be done to excess capacity, when capacity should be increased, etc. For example, a hotel estimating an increased demand in coming tourist season increases capacity of rooms from 80 to 100. The decision to increase capacity becomes important as building a new rooms and provision of services would incur cost. The manager might be able to earn profits by fulfilling increase in demand, but after tourist season, when demand tapers down, she faces with problems of underutilization of increased capacity. Measures of capacity. Capacity should be measured both in terms of output and input measures. Output measures are directly based on accuracy of estimated demand of a product. A firm would increase its manufacturing capacity if increase in demand is certain and it is for long term. Also, output measure is a good measure of capacity if a company is involved in manufacturing of less variety of products. Manufacturing of standardized products makes a company easier to dedicate resources to increase capacity. India's largest car manufacturer, Maruti Suzuki, estimates demand of its largest selling car, Maruti Alto, in terms of output measures. As demand for cars can be estimated in quite certain terms for over a long term period, that is, for more than a year or two, so company can be quite sure in allocating its resources for production of increased units. Also, as Maruti Alto is a standardized product, so all the increased capacity of resources is dedicated for production of same kind of product. Capacity can also be measured by determining the existing resources a firm has for producing a good service. This method of measuring capacity is termed as evaluating input resources. As discussed in manufacturing, one kind of car, Maruti Suzuki, can dedicate all its resources to manufacture the car. Thus, evaluating input measures is not very much complex. But if a firm is involved in manufacturing variety of goods or services, then it has to make a complex decision of allocating its limited resources for production of variety of goods. As discussed, a pizza manufacturing firm provides variety of pizza, so it requires allocating resources to different products. In such a case, the company measures how many resources it has at its disposal, which can be efficiently allocated to the demand of different type of products. Measuring capacity by determining inputs are thus used for low volume, high variety and flexible operation systems. Thus it can be seen that both determination of demand and input resources to fulfill that demand are necessary and important measures of capacity. Both measures go hand in hand and should be done simultaneously. The proper measures of production capacity equated with that of demand would able to indicate the gap, if any, between demand and production. The gap would be good indicator to make a decision about increase or decrease in capacity. Types of capacity. Design capacity is the maximum output that a process or facility can achieve if every process is working under ideal condition. Achievement of ideal condition is near impossible because there would be breakdown of machinery, absentees and other disruptions. Sustenance of such ideal condition is possible only for small period of time, such as for few hours or few days. Maintaining or forcing design capacity conditions would only increase cost for the firm and workers would not want to work without allowances for long period of time and other ideal conditions would not also be sustained for such periods. Effective capacity. Maximum output that an operation can achieve if it is carried out under normal conditions. Proper allowances, maintenance of machinery, etc. signify working under normal conditions. Effective capacity can be obtained for longer period of times and is more sustainable. Actual capacity. A firm might not be even able to achieve its effective capacity because after giving allowances such as leaves, times for lunch, etc., there might still be loss of production. Under actual conditions, employees goes on strike, machines break down, and there might be some other unexpected events. Actual capacity is measure of that output which takes into consideration production time lost to such unexpected events. While estimated production, a firm does take into account such events and then estimate output. That is why output varies from shift to shift and day to day as unexpected events vary from time to time. Thus, a proper measure of output is by calculating average of past outputs and then uses it as future output. Utilization. Operations might be designed to achieve a certain level of capacity, but usage or utilization of resources is directly dependent upon average demand or output required. Utilization is defined as degree to which resources such as machinery or labor is being used. It is expressed in percentage in calculating by using following formula. Utilization is equal to actual capacity divided maximum capacity into 100. Economies of scale. A firm can increase its capacity in relative to increase in demand. But increase in demand is not constant and repetitive. So in one time period, there might be an increase in demand, but in other, it might decrease. Capacity decisions are long term, and one capacity of production by acquiring machinery and labor is enhanced, it becomes very difficult to reduce the capacity. This is especially true for manufacturing organizations because it requires investment in equipment and other tools. Thus, to answer the question of how much capacity to increase, or in other term, what should be maximum reasonable size for the manufacturing facility, we use concept of economies of scale. The concept of economies of scale state that with increase in number of units produced, average unit cost decreases. This occurs because of spread of fixed cost over a large number of units. Fixed cost involve cost of machinery, salary, land cost, etc. Now, if some amount of machinery and labor is used to produce increased number of units, then cost per unit would come down. Most manufacturing firms achieve this by operating in more than one shift. Some resources are used repetitively in multiple shifts to produce one unit. As fixed costs keep decreasing with more production, variable cost increase. Variable costs include cost of electricity, rent, and salaries for contract workers, etc. When a firm operates in more than one shift, then consumption of utilities such as electricity increases. Also, more labor is required to manufacture more. All this leads to increase in variable costs. Economies of scale. Thus, increased capacity would entail decrease in fixed cost and increase in variable cost. An optimal point has to be identified where firm can produce its maximum at most optimal total cost. A graph shows that average cost y-axis keeps on decreasing with increase in number of units Q produced on x-axis. But at a point, total cost starts increasing even if number of units produced are increased. Capacity planning process. Following 4 steps procedure is generally adopted for making proper capacity decisions. Step 1. Estimation of future capacity. It has been discussed that investing in increasing resources such as equipment, machinery, and other tools is a direct function of demand of particular product or service. For instance, a fitness center estimated that with increasing awareness among urban consumers regarding health and fitness issues, it should invest heavily in expanding the center. Some of the questions needs to be answered were regarding segregating customers according to their need of equipment. Some might require cardiovascular training machines some for weight training, and some for aerobic exercises. The management need to find out what is the future demand in each category of exercise. Secondly, as investment is enhancing, capacity involves long-term financial commitment, so management must also take into consideration technological changes that might make current machines redundant. For instance, owner of photocopy shop wanted to expand its operations as there was increase in demand of making copies. Now, issue was whether to buy a faster operating new machine which might does the work of existing machine making it redundant, or should another machine of existing kind be bought. The owner, by considering technological changes extending well into future, bought a multiple purpose machine which in addition to photocopying also does other operations such as scanning and printing. Lastly, to meet increased future demand, management might consider increasing productivity of its existing resources. For instance, in case of increased demand of fitness center, management might increase timing of operations, or ask its labor to work for more hours. The emphasis on increasing output by increasing usage from already available resources. It might increase costs in terms of salaries, rent, and other variable cost, but such increased cost would be less than investing in new resources. But after a certain time, existing resources might get stretched to their limit, and it would not be possible to use them further without breakdown and loss in productive time. Then question that needs to be answered is investment in new facility. The best indicator for such problem is accurate forecast of demand. If increase in demand in future is certain and for long term, as was in case of fitness center, then the firm should increase their capacity by investing in new facilities. Identify capacity gaps. Gap between projected demand as was identified in step 1 and existing capacity is termed as capacity gap. The gaps can be positive or negative. Negative gap indicates projected demand to be more than existing capacity, thus signaling management to invest in capacity expansion. A positive gap would indicate that existing capacity is still more than projected demand. Thus, management should not waste resources in capacity expansion. The gap would measure accurately if proper capacity measures are identified. Should an airline use input measure or output measure to measure its capacity? This problem becomes more acute if a firm is involved in producing multiple products or services. A service firm such as bank provides multiple services. Should a bank increase its labor capacity by employing for different services, or should an employee be assigned to perform a variety of services? This can be resolved by converting estimated demand for each service into available resources, that is, input measures, A wrong measure of capacity would provide erroneous data regarding existing capacity. For example, a restaurant can provide 500 meals daily. The dining hall of restaurant has a sitting capacity of 50 people simultaneously. It is estimated that daily on an average 350 customers enjoy the service of restaurant. Now should the measure of capacity for restaurant be in terms of seating capacity or number of meals produced per day? Restaurant should measure capacity in terms of numbers of meals produced because there is a high turnover of people in restaurants. So if one batch of 50 customers is using services, then after some time another batch of individuals might be using the service. Step 3. Develop alternatives. The company can select one of the following alternatives regarding capacity expansion to cope up with increase in future demand. A firm might adopt wait and see approach. In such approach, firm observes market response and competition reaction towards launch of new product or service. For instance, not every bank jumped to provide mobile banking services to customers. Most of the banks adopted wait and see approach to evaluate customers' reactions towards such a new service. Also, investing heavily in providing such costly service might be futile if customers don't adopt it. Thus, in such cases, it is better to observe both customers and competitors' reaction. In wait and see approach, a firm is cautious and expands capacity in small increments. This allows the firm to avoid the risk of over-expansion and adoption of obsolete technologies. Another illustration is manufacturing of electric bikes. With the increase in fuel prices, customers were ready to adopt new bikes, but because of lack of recharging infrastructure and changes in battery technology at a fast rate discouraged firms to expand capacity to manufacture e-bikes at a fast rate. A firm might adopt expansionist approach. By adopting such an approach, firms intend to stay ahead of demand expansion and thus minimize its losses because of inadequate capacity. For instance, technological advances drive sales of mobile phone and various internet applications. IT firms increase their labor and technological capacity to develop such applications so that when customers adopt them, then immediate increase in demand can be readily fulfilled. In such cases, firm adopting wait and see approach loses out of such firms. In short, term expansionist strategy may lead to overcapacity and thus losses. But these losses are easily recovered by meeting first the exponential increase in demand. It has been observed that online retail companies such as Flipkart etc. have benefited a lot by adopting expansionist strategy. In the beginning, people had apprehensions buying online resulting in losses and overcapacity for the company. But now, when industry is growing at a fast rate, companies such as Flipkart, who were ahead of demand curve, have become prime player in the industry. This approach allows company to establish all resources and keep them ready in anticipation of increased orders. Step 4. Evaluate various alternatives. Various alternatives developed can be evaluated both qualitatively and quantitatively. Qualitative methods are used where variables are uncertain or cannot be measured accurately. These include long-term demand, competitors' reaction, technological changes causing disruption, customer acceptance cycle, etc. In such cases, management create scenarios involving various alternatives by taking all the variables into consideration. Such what-if analysis help managers to evaluate various alternatives and compare implication of each alternative. Quantitative methods include cash flow method equal to cash flow minus cash outflow. The alternative which provides maximum benefit in terms of profits are selected. Waiting line models used for random events, for instance, number of customers arriving at payment counters at fast food restaurant is a random event. Arrival time and processing time of each customer is different. So decision to increase payment counters or increase capacity depend upon proper estimation of such random events. Decision trees uses competitors' reaction in evaluating an alternative to expand capacity. For instance, if a company launches a product and probability of increase in demand is 40% and probability of competitors providing similar product is 30%, then should company invest in capacity expansions? So students, let us summarize what we have learnt in this module. Capacity planning is central to the long-term success of an organization. Decision to invest and expand capacity can result in losses if there is fall in demand, whereas decision not to expand might result in losing customers. Problem of capacity expansion becomes more acute when a firm is involved in producing multiple types of products and demand is uncertain and short term. This chapter discusses the importance of capacity expansion and also some important aspects such as how to measure capacity and what should be reasonable maximum size of facility. Reaching to a decision of capacity expansion can be understood by adopting a systematic approach involving four discussed steps: estimating future demand, identifying gaps with respect to existing capacity, studying alternatives and evaluating them quantitatively is the sequential process of capacity planning. Thanks.